Today presents Strike Battleship Argent, Book 1 in the Starships at War series, by Shane Lachlan Black. Copyright 2016.
Chapter 15. Aboard the Alert 3 gunship, Junior Lieutenant Maxwell Abey successfully ordered an evasive maneuver that rocketed T-Hawk 6 into a diving roll. The rest of his 5-man crew breathed a machine-filtered sigh of relief as they silently thanked him for not listening to the steady stream of complaints about orders to keep their shock harnesses threaded and fastened. Moments later, a formation of lethal warhead-tipped missiles ripped through space directly through their previous course. Right behind them was the still unidentified Kilo X-ray contact. "Target acquisition! We're being lit up!" Flight Specialist Katza shouted. "Pivot on your bearings and bring our forward screens to double power," Abey replied. The relatively tiny gunship turned to face the enemy cruiser's starboard edge like a vicious little insect ready to take on a cat. "Take your best shot, you son of a—" Red and white beams exploded from the emplacements on the cruiser's upper hull. Each shot pounded and ripped against T-Hawk 6. Her overloaded battle screens glowed angrily. But like an experienced prizefighter, the gunship took the punches, absorbed as much of the energy as she could, and struck back. The Tarantula Hawk hunter-killer gunship was second only to the Paladin multi-role hull in its formidable array of combat abilities. Among the many things a T-Hawk could do was convert a limited amount of enemy weapons energy to capacitance potential, and then feed it back into its own short-range defenses. In other words, the more you shoot at a T-Hawk, the more ammunition you're giving it to shoot back at you. This, among other things, was one reason the little gunships were so damn annoying. They were built like little bricks of ablative armor and bristling with nasty weapons. Absent a truly overwhelming center-of-mass shot with a hypervelocity ship-killer missile, they were virtually impossible to disable completely, much less destroy outright. T-Hawks were roughly 3 times the mass and volume of a fighter, but could bring as much as 4 times the equivalent firepower to bear. T-Hawk 6 lived up to its reputation moments after being staggered in space by the enemy cruiser's short-range energy weapons. The tiny gunship opened up with its brawler cannons and pounded away at the much larger vessel's shields. The cruiser shuddered with the punishment, and an alarming number of its armor plates buckled under the first barrage. For a few moments the two ships traded punches like it was the 12th round of a mismatched and unsanctioned bout in a speakeasy basement. What the enemy ship didn't realize was T-Hawk 6 was only one part of a 3-ship alert group. Long before grappling with the gunship, enemy fire control had completely lost track of the 2 Yellow Jacket fighters that had peeled off evading the cruiser's missiles. With the Nemesis corvette blasting EM interference all over the sector, by the time their point defenses recovered, it was too late. The rest of Alert 3 came screaming in on the cruiser's ventral Z-axis like diving peregrine falcons. The angry-looking little ships were no match for the cruiser in a toe-to-toe fight, but that wasn't what made Yellow Jackets threatening. These 2 second-generation fighters were armed with the most advanced torpedoes ever deployed aboard a core ship of the line. Their technical designation was the Mark V gravity-activated rail-launched oxygen compression torpedo. Jack pilots called them Fives. In keeping with the traditional playing card metaphor of the Yellow Jacket fraternity, the saying went that a pair of 5s beats anything. The reason these particular weapons were so devastating was they took full advantage of the pressure differential and consequential energy potential between the vacuum of space and the pressurized interior of a starship. Any ship with a combustible element in its atmosphere mix was vulnerable to a 5 torpedo. Given the traditional realities and requirements of biology, there were few species with ship atmospheres without at least one energetic element, and that's all the torpedo's warhead needed to unleash a fiery vengeance on everything exposed to that atmosphere. Twin Fox 5s separated from their launchers and locked targeting frequencies with identification data pulled from all 5 core ships in the vicinity. In a space of a few nanoseconds, the onboard logic systems confirmed to 6 decimal places of certainty the big enemy cruiser in front of them was the correct target. At that moment, acquisition alarms were likely sounding a hellish din on the ship's bridge, but at this range, such a sound was only useful to warn crew members their world was about to literally turn upside down. Both torpedoes went hypermach in the same instant and slammed into the ventral hull of the enemy cruiser just forward of her main engine cowlings. The dense points of the torpedoes punctured the coated metal frame and buckled the ship's support structure in several places. Twin deck-shattering explosions ripped twisted chunks of scorched metal out of the vessel's interior and covered everything visible with a light-absorbing grayish paint-like substance. From outside the ship, it looked like someone had popped a huge black bubblegum bubble all over the inside and outside of the ship. The pause lasted for about 4 seconds. Then the ship began to bleed atmosphere, and what started out as black goo very rapidly turned into what appeared to be molten white-hot glass. Plasma began to stream from the enemy cruiser's aft section as its energy dampeners and shields fought mightily to control the unusual chemical and magnetic reactions taking place both inside and outside its primary hull. Had the proper equipment been present, it would have registered the perfect conditions forming in the breach between the inner atmosphere and the hard vacuum of space. At the point where the hull had been punctured, a highly compressed combination of a temperature inversion and a bubble of pure oxygen had formed, with all the other trace elements drained out of the atmosphere and into the chemicals left behind by the armor-piercing explosions. The molecular clock ticked until finally the ionization reached a tipping point and a small bolt of lightning arced across the enemy ship's deck, igniting a dangerously compressed oxygen hypernova. Almost exactly 5 seconds after impact, twin explosions lit up space for 2 million miles. Staggered, off course, and bleeding from nearly a dozen hull breaches, the enemy cruiser somehow miraculously righted itself and bore down on DSS Argent. T-Hawk 6 pursued, engaging the larger vessel's aft point defense in a running firefight towards Captain Hunter's command.
Shane Lachlan Black here. I built a bookstore on a site called getabook.today. It's where I make our work available to readers like yourself. This is our catalog. All these books are real. 81 titles, 18 collections, 2 million words. All the covers were produced by my studio. All the books are human-authored by me. Getabook.today does all the things other bookstores do. Here's how it works. You will find the sections of the store in the menu. Getabook.today works on both mobile and PC. Find a book you like and click or tap to get to the book page. Some books have trailers and audio samples. Some have editorial and reviews. Some have sample chapters. Click or tap to enjoy the sample and use the button to return to the bookstore. When you've found a book you like, click or tap the Secure Buy button to go to our payment processor. We have industry-standard secure ordering and a 7-day money-back guarantee on digital purchases. We ship paperbacks and hardcovers in the U.S. and internationally. You complete your purchase by clicking or tapping the Pay button. The store will process your order, and you'll get an email that looks like this. If it's a digital purchase, click or tap the Download button, and the book is yours. Ebooks arrive in EPUB format. Audiobooks are in MP3s. Collections arrive in zip archives. There is no DRM, no logins, no format hassles, and your books won't disappear someday. You can install them on all your devices, phones, tablets, e-readers, PCs, or televisions. Our books are compatible with all devices. Our print titles are premium quality, and each one is signed by me. When you make a purchase from our store, you are directly supporting artists and an author. This is how we fund new stories, and the values our characters stand for: honor, friendship, courage, and teamwork. The best way you can show your support is to buy our books and our official merchandise from Getabook.today, the home of Lady Star, the Iron Jammers, the Starships Universe, and Kings and Conquest. All ahead, battle speed.
Chapter 16. CIC report. Point scanners are tracking 68 inbounds with harmonics up the range to 5 frequencies. At least a quarter of those birds are track on scan, and another 20% are likely track on signature. 40 seconds to impact. Helm, reverse all engines, full power. Give me a course 170 by 180 and reorient our heading 17 degrees starboard to bring port heavy point defenses to bear on the inbounds. Aye, sir. Helm answering all engines reverse. New course 180 orienting heading to 170 relative. The auto systems opened up, spitting 60 high-energy superhot bolts of plasma energy a second at the rapidly approaching missiles. Half the incoming wave detonated, filling space with plasma disruptions, debris, and interference patterns. The remaining missiles screamed out of the fireballs and continued to accelerate, dodging and swerving to avoid the Argent's formidable screening weapons. By all modern battle protocols, Hunter was playing it by the book. His biggest problem was his big ship. Citadel-class vessels were designed to direct maximum firepower at big enemy targets. While they were no slouch in a stand-up fight, they were 3 times as powerful in a battle group, where smaller, more specialized vessels like anti-missile frigates and escort destroyers could sweep the battle space clear of missile barrages and fighters and leave the capital ships free to do what capital ships do best. If any criticism could be directed at the young captain, it would have been his choice not to launch a larger combat space patrol. A properly formed strike squadron might not have been able to replace a battle group on a 1-to-1 equivalency, but it certainly could have provided Argent with far more effective screening. Hunter wasn't worried. 3 dozen missiles were a concern, but even with X-ray or antimatter warheads, they shouldn't be able to overcome the mighty battleship's heavy shields or magnetic armor belt. Tactical, launch countermeasures, maximum power to heavy point defenses, reinforced port-side battle screens, and stand by to sound collision. Aye, sir. Launching countermeasures. A swarm of more than 100 tiny rockets packed with electronic warfare circuitry exploded in all directions from Argent's hull. They all went live at once, pouring millions of watts of power through transmitters designed to scramble everything from short-range ultra-wideband to 2 cans and a piece of string. Some were set to pretend they were entire ships. Others were simply set to blast noise on a wide frequency range as long as possible until their tiny capacitors were drained of their energy. Zony? Nemesis can't punch through all this at once, sir. Some of those missiles are going for the countermeasures, but most aren't. We're just too big a target and we're too close. Then we'll do it the old-fashioned way, Hunter said rhetorically. Helm, bring us up on the Z-axis and stand by port heavy point defense. Aye, sir. Heading Z now 040 true. Sound collision? The alarm sounded on all decks as the first missiles broke threat range. The entire bridge crew watched and waited for their heavy point defense batteries to obliterate the missile barrage. Nothing happened. Chapter 17. Heavily armed Marines from 2nd Paladins advanced 2 by 2 down the darkened reddish corridor leading to the load lane for Auxiliary Power 7. Internal sensors had confirmed more than 24 distinct signatures of humanoid life forms at various locations in and around the engineering deck, but by now the intruders were doing a more than adequate job of concealing their locations with man-portable sensor scrambling equipment. What was clear was the boarding party was heavily armed and highly motivated. They weren't attacking or trying to advance and capture larger sections of the ship. For reasons unknown, they seemed to be content to fortify Ocon 7, Reactor 7, and one of the coolant system's overload control mechanism chambers aft of the assembly room, where the initial attack had taken place. They seemed to be waiting for something. Left and right, Sanders. Left and right. Major Moody's mic pickup thumped as he closed the transmitter. The 3 Marines nearest the point of the squad were armed with Tenerife Clivers 40-40 assault guns. They were 2-handed weapons designed for short-range punch. The TK-40s could fire concussive bolts of energy with ranged burst capability and do so as part of any pattern of fire. This eliminated the need for over-under designs with 2 kinds of ordnance. Like a grenade, a conch bolt could be set to detonate at range or detonated at range with another shot from the same gun. At ranges under 20 meters, they were the equivalent of combat shotguns, if such weapons were being wielded by 15-foot-tall guerrillas. One Marine could lay down enough suppressing fire to pin a small company if he got far enough out in the open and really let his weapon get the bit in its teeth. Sustained fire from 6 Marines could rip the first floor out from under a 6-story building in a matter of a few seconds. Vital to the Argent's Marine units were the ship's own defensive systems. All of the 2nd Paladin's weapons were tuned to the deck battle screens such that any shot fired by an Argent Marine would be absorbed by directional shielding around the decks, bulkheads, ceilings, and doors. Properly configured, they prevented the assault teams from blowing holes in their own ships with their guns. The systems could also be tuned in reverse, allowing Argent forces to fire their weapons unimpeded while blocking enemy fire. Unfortunately, at the moment, the shielding on the port side of the ship was operating on reserve power at only 40% capability. First Squad Corporal Benjamin Sanders stopped at the load lane and peered around the corner. His TAC systems performed a half-second analysis of the 60-foot corridor and reported no targets. He made a quick hand gesture and waited for instructions. Set ambient and advance, 2 by 2. Sanders crept quickly down the hallway and stopped, back to the bulkhead. The 2 Marines following his lead silently arrived at his side a moment later. His TAC suit alerted on the door, and the signal was transmitted to the rest of the squad instantly. Major, I have hostiles inside Oxcon 7. Hatches sealed. No damage visible to decks or bulkheads. Moody keyed his comlink. Zoni, this is Moo in engineering. Confirm hostiles only in Oxcon. The hatch opened, and one of the hostiles casually emerged. When the lights from the assault team's TAC suits hit him, he tried to scramble back inside and ran directly into the face of the rifle-armed intruder behind him. A shot punctured the ceiling and sparks showered all over the deck. One of the Marines behind Corporal Sanders fired a single shot from his TK-40, which flashed down the hall and detonated, nearly overloading the battle screens and causing the deck to buckle and shudder. More intruders ran to the door, and an all-out melee ensued. Sanders pulled one of the black-suited humanoids into the hall and slammed him back first against the opposite bulkhead. Another Marine struggled with the armed intruder and his weapon, causing another shot to go off. This one blasted a foot-wide hole in the opposite bulkhead. The overpressure from the explosion knocked Sanders off balance and he fell, pulling his opponent with him. This left the armed intruder alone in the middle of the hall. He leveled his weapon and aimed at Major Moody before the Marine officer punched 3 blinding white conch rounds into his midsection. He wheeled back over the other 2 and landed hard. His rifle clattered on the deck. "Say again, assault team! Say again!" Zoni's voice was modulated by static and harmonics over the intraship channel. "Confirm hostiles only in Oxcon 7, Zoni. We've got weapons fire down here. You, on the floor. Hands where I can see 'em, or you're next." Sanders and the intruder's struggle abated somewhat, and finally, the unidentified humanoid raised his hands in a gesture of surrender, with Corporal Sanders' arm tight around his throat. "Confirmed, assault team. 6 hostiles only in Oxcon 7. Private, seal that hatch." "Sir?" the private replied, unsure why they would close the door on the bad guys. "Seal it," Moo replied. "Sanders, bring him and pull back. Let's go." Sanders pulled the prisoner to his feet and shoved him down the corridor towards the Major. "Zoni, patch me to intraship, but only inside Oxcon 7. "Affirmative, Major. You're on." "Attention, unidentified personnel. You have exactly 15 seconds to put down your weapons and surrender your position, or we will depressurize the chamber and take it by force. Acknowledge by knocking on the hatch 3 times with a weapon." 5 seconds passed. "Major, I'm getting odd readings from Oxcon 7. Are you sure?" The deck alarms all went off at once. The lights shifted to a painful bright yellow. "Explosive alarm! Everybody out! Move! Move! Move!" Moody grabbed one of the Marines by the scruff of the neck and the prisoner with the other and charged back up the corridor away from the load lane. The explosion surrounded everyone and everything with a flaming gale force wind before the shockwaves shattered the deck and bulkheads.
The rest of the story is only one keyword away. Visit jumpline.click in your browser. New keywords are activated every day. Get access to our entire catalog of science fiction, fantasy, and gamelit.